Hey guys, Legendary Grimlock here, and today we have Can King Ghidorah solo Monster Hunter. Now, the rules are going to be simple and are going to be the same as the Godzilla and Kong one, and they're going to be at a size compatible enough to fight against King Ghidorah. Now again, King Ghidorah is 521 feet tall. You already know what he is in the Monsterverse here. He has his gravity beams, he's got his storm, which is basically creating like Category 6 hurricanes, which is absolutely ridiculous in all honesty. It can also cause floods, tsunamis, especially in like localized areas or populated areas here. So the monsters we're going to be giving him are, in this order, Garangolm, Scorned Magnamalo, Shagaru Magala, Seething Bazelgeuse, Starving Deviljho, Dreadking Rathalos, Ignami, Haruder Mugger, or Harudu. I'm just going to call it Harudu. And then Risen Kushala Daora, with the final boss being Shadamador, alright? Now, I know some of you guys may be asking, why no Lao Shanglong, why no Gog Mazios, but I am saving them for a future video for the next wave. So, yeah, I think King Ghidorah does have a couple of advantages we should talk about here, and then there's a couple of disadvantages. So, for his advantages here, obviously he has his 3 heads, which are basically cognitive and functional in their own capacity, even surviving without the other heads here, including the middle one. Alright, so even if King Ghidorah's middle head was blown off, unlike in the original, he would be able to survive pretty well here. King Ghidorah also has his flight capabilities, which most of the monsters on this list don't have, with I think the only exception being the Elder Dragons, one of the Elder Dragons, and then Seething Bazelgeuse and Dreadking. And King Ghidorah also has his regenerative nature, and he's easily able to react to Godzilla's atomic breath, which is in the faster than light department to relativistic speeds, or the lower ends of it are the relativistic speeds. King Ghidorah also has a very much higher IQ than most of the monsters here, minus characters like Kong, and I would probably say he might be smarter than Godzilla, or they may be actually on a relative stature to battle IQ and stuff like that. But I think that should really cover it. His disadvantages is simply his lack of speed and his lack of mobility when he's on the ground. So without further ado, let's really begin here, and we're going to start off with Garangolm, the Elder Dragon level Fanged Beast. Now yes, Garangolm is Elder Dragon level, and unfortunately his turf war with Malzeno was cut out of the game. Now, Monster Hunter Rise definitely had a plethora of cutout turf wars. We would have actually seen Almudron versus Tetranodon, where he pretty much just pimp slaps Tetranodon across the battlefield here. But again, Garangolm is one of the few that honestly got done dirty by Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak here, because again, he's supposed to be one of the top 3 strongest monsters in that game, a monster that's meant or always meant to come in and fight against the likes of Malzeno and Lunagarin, but again, he kind of just gets crapped on, to be honest. Now, what are Garangolm's advantages in a size equalization towards King Ghidorah? Now, I actually think this would actually be a pretty intense fight, to be honest, because I don't think King Ghidorah is overpowering Garangolm in a close physical fight here. Keep in mind, both Garangolm's fists are imbued with the elements Blast and Water Blight. Or is it Fire? Probably both, in all honesty, but it is what it is. So Garangolm can not only burn and then, make King Ghidorah slippery and all over and stuff, but the sheer fact that he should be able to not only physically overpower King Ghidorah in a close quarters combat situation, but actually be able to tank a lot of his attacks. If not, it would actually be pretty interesting here if he puts his arms up and, King Ghidorah shoots his gravity beams, and then he just winds up, causing a massive explosion that sends both of them back. And again, you guys have to keep in mind here, the scale of their attacks are much bigger as well. Meaning if he does that little ground bomb thing, yeah, that's causing some massive damage to King Ghidorah. However, King Ghidorah does have an advantage, and that is his flight here. Now, I think the best way for King Ghidorah to go about it is to utilize his storm. Maybe hiding above the clouds and stuff like that, going around from different angles, shooting gravity beams to get Garangolm to turn in certain directions. And once he has a good pattern going, drop down on him, grab him, yoke him up, drop him like a bad habit like he did Godzilla. So that's the best way King Ghidorah can win. Otherwise, it's pretty much just trying to rely on his gravity beams, which I don't see Ghidorah doing fully. Now let's move on to his next opponent, Scorned Magnamalo. Now this is actually scary. Like, if you guys think about it, Magnamalo was a straight up menace. Like, bro's got on black Air Forces in this game. Not in the same category as Nergigante's black Tims. But again, black Air Force energy regardless. So you have Scorned Magnamalo at the same size, or at a size relative enough to fight against King Ghidorah. I want y'all to think about that. Like, the blades, the hellfire, and the dragon energy. And in all honesty, King Ghidorah is going to be probably starstruck at what Magnamalo, or Scorned Magnamalo, is going to try to do here. Keep in mind that if King Ghidorah flies, Magnamalo can just chase him. I mean, he's chasing faster monsters into the air that have a much faster flight speed, like Kushala Daora, Teostra, what else is his name? Rathalos, Rathian, Barioth is what I'm thinking of. So these monsters all have a faster flying speed and a faster takeoff speed than King Ghidorah, and yet Magnamalo is still pouncing on them like it's nothing here. Even the Risen Elder Dragons have a tough time with Scorned Magnamalo, and he's still able to go toe-to-toe with Primordial Malzeno regardless. A much stronger, much more powerful Malzeno than his original state. Matter of fact, that is his original state, huh? But it's actually crazy here, but King Ghidorah does have a way that he can go about this here, and believe it or not, it's actually a pretty easy way for him to go about this here. All he has to do is really just get a hold of Scorned Magnamalo and drain his energy, to which he can do here. I mean, Scorned Magnamalo hasn't fought something with a whole 3 heads and can just grab him with one of the heads and just slam him. And to be quite honest, that might be the way this goes about it. I actually do see Scorned Magnamalo using his Hellfire capabilities to basically give Ghidorah a tough time here, using his speed and agility, and he might be able to take off ahead here. And King Ghidorah may, try to use that flight to his advantage here. But I think once King Ghidorah could get a good hold on him with 2 of his heads here, or maybe just 1 of his heads to be quite honest here, or maybe, right, he does that little lightning burst thing to kind of stun Scorned Magnamalo for a little bit, and then he goes in to wrap his heads around him and drain him the same way that he did Godzilla. Now again, Magnamalo may actually use the explosion to actually get Ghidorah off him. And I do think Ghidorah would have siphoned off a bit of energy before Magnamalo could actually get that explosion off. Now, we don't know what dragon energy would do to Ghidorah, or the dragon element, excuse me. And in all honesty, that's where it would kind of just go into theory territory, like we did with Goliath. Dragon energy, or the dragon element itself, is something so wild and unpredictable, you don't know how it's going to affect monsters. I mean, look at Stygian Zinogre, a regular Zinogre that's just bonded with Dracophage bugs, and then is just infused and poured in with dragon energy because of their symbiotic relationship. And we don't know how that, we didn't expect that now, did we? I mean, dragon energy is just such a wild phenomenon that it's very hard to determine what King Ghidorah would become if he absorbed that. But nevertheless, he should move on with high difficulty. Now, next up, we got Shagaru Magala. And believe it or not, this takes away a lot of King Ghidorah's advantages here, including things like his regeneration, Actually, that's probably one of his biggest advantages too here. His regeneration. He also has to deal with Shagaru's speed as well, and the sheer fact that he can't really grapple with Shagaru Magala in terms of like an aerial combat like he did with Rodan. Because keep in mind, even if he grabs Shagaru Magala by the wings here, Shagaru Magala can just blast in his face or something like that with his purple fire breath, or with its frenzy breath or whatever. Then you have the sheer fact that it also has multiple limbs, to be honest. And then there's the frenzy virus, which also interferes with the natural healing factor of the player's character, which is something that really not a lot of monsters can do. Maybe Scorned Magnamalo, because again, it's Hellfire kind of like detonates eventually. But again, it's just like Shagaru Magala can pretty much nullify a healing factor. Now, Ghidorah is very different because his biology is not in the same category as something like Godzilla or Kong's and stuff like that. And maybe if Shagaru Magala went against, Kong or Godzilla here, then yeah, I definitely could see him using the Frenzy Virus to nullify their healing factors here. But again, we don't know if that would work on Ghidorah because his biology is so different. It's kind of like a Fatalis situation or maybe even a Nergigante situation. They're so unnatural to the natural order that you don't know if it's going to affect them or not. And Ghidorah does have a couple win cons of his own here that if this just doesn't work, then this just turns into pretty much an eventual brawl here. Like, it really does here. It turns into kind of like a battle of wills and stuff here, and like whoever runs out of stamina simply just wins it there. And again, I do think King Ghidorah would utilize his storm to throw off Shagaru Magala here, and then get in a well-timed or maybe even a well-placed grab, and maybe just force himself on top of Shagaru Magala here and just slam it into the ground with its full weight. So in all honesty, round 1 results, definitely going to say mid to high difficulty with definitely some trickery. Like, Ghidorah's going to have to play this by his intelligence mostly, same way as Kong has. Now, next off, we have the wild cards. And in this one, we have Seething Bazelgeuse. Now, I want y'all to think. We just turned a B-52 bomber into a whole nuke. Meaning, not only are the scales bigger, but the explosions, yeah, kiss the city goodbye. Kiss the country goodbye. Yeah, because that's a whole nuke now. Yeah, it's pretty bad here. And again, this is one of the hardest, definitely one of the hardest fights King Ghidorah has to go through on this list here. Because again, I do think the explosions, or at least the scales, would probably interest Kevin's head or something like that. And then all of a sudden, boom, it just exploded in your face here. Now, I do think King Ghidorah can definitely tank those explosions, but not for long here. I do think the best way Seething Bazelgeuse could go is try to like detonate a close range bomb, or detonate all of his scales at a close range. Because again, it can tank this here. But I think this is where King Ghidorah's gravity beams could actually be his saving grace here. And King Ghidorah may actually start to notice when the bombs on a Seething Bazelgeuse are pretty much active here. Pretty much giving him the perfect opportunity and the perfect window to honestly just blow Bazelgeuse up by its own neck. I know, it sounds crazy here, but you might be asking, wait a minute, why has no monster done that? Then that's what I'm saying here. But keep in mind, when Deviljho bites down on Bazelgeuse's neck, it actually causes the explosion. And again, Seething Bazelgeuse should be able to tank that, but again, that's going to leave some serious damage. And that's enough damage for King Ghidorah to get in, do his thing, and get it over with. So again, definitely say this was a more high difficulty situation than the last one. But yeah, it's definitely one of the best wild cards I could think of. Now, next up, we got a Starving Deviljho, which should be above a Savage Deviljho because it's a much higher and is a much more deadlier version of Deviljho here. Same dragon energy and stuff like that, just a whole nother level. Plus, it's golden. Now, what makes this such a wild card is that a Deviljho, again, on the same size as like Kong or Ghidorah, as I said in my last videos, is an absolute nightmare. And again, this is maybe where Ghidorah can get that energy drain off because of this Deviljho's recklessness. I actually do think that King Ghidorah would be able to do the same thing that it did with Godzilla here, and just drop Deviljho from pretty much the sky here, wrap itself around it, and drain its energy. However, it is still going to have to get close, and I don't think the stun would probably work the same degree as Deviljho here. Now, next off, we have a part where King Ghidorah could actually lose, to believe it or not, and that is Dreadking Rathalos. Yeah. You see, the problem is Ghidorah wouldn't be able to do this with Rathalos at all. Like, he wouldn't be able to pull the same stunt he did with Rodan, because again, Rodan has nothing like a uranium beam or anything coming out of his mouth. And that's kind of the unfortunate part about it here, because Dreadking Rathalos should possibly, and again, possibly, could be above Silver and Zenith Rathalos. And again, I probably do think he's more on par with Silver Rathalos than above him. But again, it's one of the higher level Elder Dragon class Rathaloses. And what makes it so interesting here is that this dude at the same size, being able to cause like meteor showers and everything, it's definitely going to be a chaotic battle here. And in all honesty, I could see King Ghidorah stopping at Dreadking, to be honest. The speed, the intelligence, the ability to kind of break through that storm, especially if we use Monster Hunter stories and stuff like that. And then the sheer fact that Dreadking could honestly just outmaneuver and outperform Ghidorah the same way a Silver Rathalos outmaneuvered and outperformed a Bazelgeuse in the sky, with a Bazelgeuse having a lot more weight and possibly a lot more power distribution than a Rathalos. But then again, King Ghidorah could eventually win it if he's able to grab Rathalos from the back, pause, and then use his gravity beams pretty much from the back. All right? I mean, that is a possible win con here. So even if I say he stops at Dreadking, I definitely think he gets past it, high difficulty. Now, we got the next one, the Elder Dragon tier. And we're starting off with Haru. I'm not going to say the full name because, again, I can't pronounce it properly. I was practicing multiple times during this video, and I just like, you know what? I'm just going to call him Haru. So Haru here is an Elder Dragon that can pretty much bend metal. Yeah, this is the original metal bender. Get over it. So Haru here is able to bend and liquidize the metal components or the metal liquid that is within his body and actually use it to create a plethora of things here. Being able to use it to attack his opponent, being able to use it to pretty much, wrap around them, basically manipulate it however he wants to. And then when he's enraged, he can actually secrete this fire that also allows him to warm that liquid metal and cause fiery explosions here. Now, I do think King Ghidorah is going to have a tough time damaging Haru, especially if they're the same size. This is because it's also able to increase his durability with that same liquid metal. And again, I think the real problem in this situation is that Ghidorah has to find a way to really damage Haru permanently before it can really increase his durability. And again, I don't really see how that could happen. I really don't. I do think he could stop here. But then again, I also think maybe there is a way for Ghidorah to maybe crush him. Maybe Ghidorah uses the full force momentum, or maybe he has to take him to a much higher degree here in the atmosphere and then pretty much just slam himself right on top of Haru from that same position and then just crush him like that. But again, I could see it happening. It's just a very hard fight. Next off, we have Ignami. And Ignami, in all honesty, in the same size as Ghidorah, is definitely something that we got to worry about here. Because Ignami can actually not only manipulate plant matter to the point where it pretty much just grows around him, it can actually use it as a defense, but also it secretes a powder that can not only increase its durability, but can put its opponents to sleep. Now again, don't know if this could work because of Ghidorah's biology, but hey, yeah, I mean, it very well could. Because imagine he just pretty much hits him with the Pokemon move Yawn, and then Ghidorah just drops, just goes to sleep like that. I know it's absolutely crazy here, but then you also have Risen Kushala Daora, and in all honesty, it's very possible Ghidorah could stop here. Because this is where his storm is turned into pretty much his disadvantage, or pretty much his advantage, right? Is now Kushala Daora's advantage, right? So his whole storm becomes his storm after a while. And this is because Kushala Daora is a master at tornado manipulation or wind manipulation. So imagine King Ghidorah's tornadoes, right? The ones he's able to create from his Category 6 Extinction Storm or whatever, right? And then you also have Kushala Daora, who's a master at manipulating tornadoes, master at even manipulating the winds here. And it's very possible it may just turn those winds on Ghidorah, causing him to spiral out of control here. And then that takes away one of his biggest advantages, which is using the storm to... excuse me. Which is using the storm to kind of overcome that situation or overcome anything in the battle here. And in all honesty, I actually do see him stopping at Rigid Kushala Daora. It's a much stronger, much more amped up version of the regular Kushala Daora, which was fighting against Amatsu and All Mother Nawa, beings that could actually destroy the entire set of continents in Monster Hunter Rise. But then we all know where he's stopping. I think I explained this in my last video I did with Godzilla and Dalmador, you know, the final clash respectively. And yeah, I think it's pretty obvious. We got Shah Dalmador. We got the final boss, the king of Elder Dragons, the rightful ruler of the mountains, the real king under the mountains, I should say. And in all honesty, Shah Dalmador is just a whole nother level. A Elder Dragon that doesn't need the size equalized situation, much like Laviente in the Kong video. And in all honesty, it's not looking good for I won't say Godzilla. It's not looking good for Ghidorah here. Yeah, he has his regeneration. Yes, he has his gravity, his flight, his storm. But in all honesty, what could he do to something that can create the stars for the world to admire? A whole river of stars, all right? And keep in mind, a river of stars is around the 4,000 department. Meaning Dalmador, in a single fire breath, could create 4,000 stars, at least. Now again, we don't know the maximum for this at all. But to be kind of honest here, if we actually do the calculations and do the feats for it, you can get Dalmador to the multi-solar system department, which is honestly mainly above what the Monsterverse has, which is around the dwarf star level. And in all honesty, I do think it stops here. He doesn't clear it. Now again, even if I said he beats the Elder Dragons, which he still can, I still think there is some way he could get past the Elder Dragons and get past Risen Kushala Daora here pretty easily. But again, you have the other monsters as well that could just give him trouble. And then you get to Dalmador, and it's just like, well, it was a nice run, wasn't it? Like, and again, I'm not trying to say here that, you know, these other monsters are fodder or anything. But again, when it comes to Dalmador, he's the top of the top. He's the mountain crusher. Bro, him just shifting himself displaces entire continents. Like, just him, like, you know, moving or, you know, just like, you know, like you stretch in the early morning. Yeah, that's what's displacing continents and stuff like that. So the final results, the highest I could give King Ghidorah is an 80%, while the lowest I could give him is definitely a 50%. I think Dread King, maybe the Elder Dragons themselves, and then obviously Shah Dalmador just are too much for him, too versatile, and too many things they could use to kind of just stop him. But that's going to be all for today, you guys. Please comment down below, like and subscribe, and share it with your friends. And I'll see you guys for the last video of this survival series. Peace.